I think sometimes people think empathy is like putting ourselves in someone's shoes. I know what it's like. Oh, right, I get it. You were abused, and I understand, and that must be awful. But I can't really like put myself in your shoes because I've still got my shoes on. So it's dangerous for me to try and assume that my understanding of your experience will be the same, right?
I don't know about you, but sometimes, and especially when I read the news, I feel a bit despondent about my ability to support kids with the kinds of things they're coming into contact with these days. Things that weren't even on my radar when I was a teenager. If you have the same worries, this episode is for you. This episode is sponsored by training provider Flourish, and my guest today is an expert in supporting teenagers with the emotional challenges that often come with adolescence. Charlotte Gordon is a nationally recognised youth worker and trainer who has deep expertise in addressing anxiety, depression and distress, and empowers those who work with teenagers to have the practical life skills they need to help young people develop emotional resilience and well-being. Her approaches are especially effective in supporting neurodiverse young people. As a single mother, Charlotte founded KIP Education to reach the young people who often fall through the cracks in traditional educational settings. Her programs aim to cultivate self-awareness, mindfulness, critical thinking, communication skills, and social empathy, empowering young people to manage stress and develop a strong sense of social consciousness and human values. Charlotte's going to talk to us today about a parenting course that offers practical advice and the opportunity to improve our knowledge around mental health, well-being, and safety. The Flourish Empowered Parenting Course Bundle covers topics such as vaping, gang violence, and supporting LGBTQIA+ children, all things which just were an issue, but I didn't know it, and we didn't know it when I was 15. She also has a great discount code just for Teenage Kicks listeners. But first, in the great tradition of this podcast, we're not going to let her get away with it. I'm going to ask Charlotte about her own teenage years. Charlotte, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me, Helen. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm really excited to hear your expertise because all of us parents of teenagers are worried about the things that they worry about, and we're worried about them because they're worrying. And I think you're going to give us some tips and ideas on how we can navigate that because it's constant, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not as hard as I think we think it is. And probably worrying isn't the best option in the grand scheme of everything. We probably do have a lot of the tools at our disposal. We're definitely more tools today than we had. So you talking about when we were 15, there definitely was far less tools going on. So we do have a lot in our reach at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, mental health wasn't even on my radar when I was young, and I really doubt it was on my parents' radar. So as you say, we are in a more accepting place of the fact that these anxieties, this mental health topic needs to be talked about. And I think although a lot of young people are quite averse to talking about their feelings, especially with their parents, a lot of them do recognize the importance of taking care of their mental health, right? Before we get into it though, I want to ask you, Charlotte, what was it like growing up for you?
Oh, that's a really good question, and I think about it a lot. So, I was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. Funnily enough, off the back of my son, who's going to be 15 tomorrow, off the back of his diagnosis.
Mm.
And I think looking back now at my teenage years, I can see that it was a lot of ADHD stuff going on, undiagnosed
Right.
ADHD stuff going on. But I had no idea. So at that time, I just thought, I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I don't know why. why is everyone happy? Why is everybody, got a nice appearance, got a nice, works harder, can concentrate better, can do this better, can do that better, looks better, all these. I'm part of the dieting generation as well, so there was all that sort of pressure as well, and it was. I wouldn't go back to it if you paid me.
Mm.
Maybe if you paid me, but I wouldn't go back to it because it was really, really rubbish for me. I was really miserable, genuinely miserable, like almost walking around with a black cloud
Mm.
permanently. So I had quite a negative time growing up. I didn't feel like I was good enough from a very early age. And that triggered a load of unhelpful coping mechanisms, which when you're 9 and you decide to cope, then yeah, it makes it very, very difficult. Coping when you're 9 years old, you come up with really unhelpful coping skills like harming yourself, like eating disorders, like drugs, choosing bad
Mm.
friendships. When you're choosing your bad friendships and then you move on to romantic relationships, you choose really badly there as well. And
Mm.
all really cliche stuff. But it was really awful. It really awful for me. But when I sort of think about what's brought me to today, it was all of that. So for me, a lot of like what I went through as a young person, I didn't want other young people to go through. And that's a lot of the narrative of what others are now talking about today. But I've been on this for, you know, 20 odd years,
Mm.
trying to get everybody to hear that the bottom line for everybody is mental health. The reasons around drug use is mental health. The reasons around people feeling disconnected is mental health.
Yeah.
The consuming, it's all mental health stuff. But yeah, as a young person, I didn't even know what kale was as a young person. We didn't know what asparagus was. That was just like fancy food.
Mm.
So we had no idea about diet. We had no idea really how to look after ourselves. So we turned to things like drugs and promiscuousness and just general bad, what I now see is bad behavior. It's behavior that I guess teenagers today are not all thinking in the same space. I'm
Mm.
not saying that I didn't have a nice childhood and
Yeah.
teens. I really have a good time just putting it out there. Being dysfunctional is has its moments for sure, but yeah, it was dark. It was really, really dark. And yeah, and I think when you're harming yourself, there's a lot of
Mm.
shame that goes with it. It,
Mm.
it gets you in a really negative cycle. Yeah, which is really quite sad. And I wish I'd sort of articulated it at the time. I think I would have got a lot more from the people around me. But because I couldn't articulate it, I just was really prickly and difficult, and
Mm.
it just made it really hard for adults to see that I was actually unhappy. I think they just thought I was horrid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. And I really love that you identify the, in air quotes, poor behavior, difficult behavior, horridness as coping strategies, because that makes complete sense to me. If you're not feeling able to express your feelings and have them validated and get your emotional needs met, then it's normal to reach out for coping strategies. And you've identified pretty much all of the coping strategies. The over consuming it's a classic one that so many of us deal with, and I know I can be prone to that. And I notice it when it's happening and think, hang on, okay, what am I not looking at here? Because this is me avoiding something. And the promiscuity you mentioned, that was so me in my early 20s. I was like, well, this is how I get attention and love. And of course it wasn't. And I was always going to fall flat on my face with that. But what I love is that we can talk to young people about this today. It doesn't phase them. If my mum and dad had started talking to me about overconsumption and promiscuity and the wrong kind of boyfriends, I would have just been, excuse me, Kevin and Perry here, get out of my life. And I know there
It
is
would
a
never
tendency for teenagers to do that. Still, they really have to separate from their parents. They don't want us meddling in their stuff. But it's more on the agenda. It's more recognized as a coping strategy, as you've labeled, as you correctly named it. And so there's more chance that it will get talked about and addressed rather than buried and left to fester until we're in our 40s and 50s to figure out and fix. How how was it for you when you finally realized that all of these things, all of that history was kind of a cry for help? I don't want to over dramatize it, but a coping strategy.
Well, I definitely happened on a therapist's chair,
Okay.
and I definitely cried. I definitely cried about it. Um, Yeah, it was really intense, because she was like, "It's your that's your child," like, she didn't know what else to do, and so
Mm,
she did what she needed to do to survive, and I think that's, like, a really useful thing for parents to even process harming behaviors as survival rather than I think, I do a lot of, conversations with, professionals and parents around self-harm and eating disorders. And they can't get their head around it because it feels so like no, there's no joy. It's not like the idea maybe you're going to go out and take drugs and you might have a good time when you do that, and then it might lead to something negative. Harming just seems like harming, right?
mm,
So parents tend to freak out and blood and stuff, all of these things freak
mm.
parents out, my baby's hurting themselves.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at the behavior as communication, the communication is I don't know how to handle what is going on right now. I'm really struggling. Um, and I think that is the bit that we know now with our own children. I think, like my kids might do something wrong. I'm not going to be in a mood with them for a week about it. And like, I think, and I've decided they were wrong. And, I never think that. I just think you did something wrong, but you're not wrong, and I'm upset now, but I'm not going to be upset forever. And it changes nothing on how much I care and love you. It's
Mm.
you did something wrong, it's we'll discuss it and move on. Whereas, with my parents, I was always just that bit too much for everybody. And so I
Mm.
was always trying to be less. But
Oh my God.
yeah, I just yeah, that I guess that's that old age concept of belonging and fitting in. And I don't think I really felt like I belonged anywhere, but I was desperately trying to fit in. And when you're trying to fit in, you end
Yeah.
up actually feeling a bit further away
Mhm.
from where you're trying to belong. So it's like a double-edged sword. But yeah, I guess, when you're trying to fit in, no one really cares who you are or what you are either. So it's all yeah, belonging. And I think when I started like taking drugs, I was like, yeah, I belong here, right?
Right.
And that in my space. I know who I am. I can see, all of you like at school, you think I'm like the druggie at school, right? But that's I am something. I am a person at this point. And there's something very interesting in yeah, how we try to fit in or where we think we're fitting in or not. And that real belonging. You can't beat belonging. You
Yeah.
can't beat that feeling of when you really belong.
Yeah. Well, it's biological, isn't it? We from if you think back to, I've talked about this before, early caveman days when belonging actually meant survival. If you didn't belong, you were probably going to get eaten by something because you weren't part of the tribe. You were out on your own, or out on your own. Man can't survive alone. And so it's a
Right.
primal need. And if that primal need is not met, then you just feel wrong completely. And I was just struck when you said, I was too much and I was always trying to be less. And that gave me a bit of a goosebump moment because that's just heartbreaking for anyone, but really for a child to be trying to be less of a person than who they really are. And I'm assuming you wouldn't blame your parents for that. It's the way that society was operating, it's the fact that we didn't have mental health on the agenda. What do you think you needed? Had you known how to ask for it back then?
Oh, that is a great question. I probably needed less judgment. There was a lot of judgment going on, a lot of perceived judgment, maybe as well. And that made me judge myself even more than I was already judging myself, because I think
Mm,
it's natural that you do judge.
mm,
Um, yeah, a lot more forgiveness.
mm,
Um, whatever the things that I mean, I pretty much had a secret life in my teens. I had to have my stomach pumped when I was about 17, right? And I'll never forget it because my mum came to the hospital and I told her everything. I decided like I was just going to tell her all the drugs I'd ever tried and taken. And I was on like this mission. So I just thought I'll tell her all of that. And I just remember my mum sobbing next to me. It was a complete and utter shock. She just wasn't aware of any of it. But I'd
mm,
made it that way because
mm,
you don't, you're not interested in the real me. You're only interested in the academic side, which I'm failing miserably at. I'm just getting
right.
worse and worse at. So I'm less of a person there. Um, I was quite a tomboy, what they call a tomboy. I don't like it as an expression. I don't think it's helpful personally, but I was a tomboy, and I think my mum wanted like a really girly girl,
Mm,
so she was always that. So I didn't fit in there. But my mum really loves me,
mm,
and my mum really loved me then as well. And as an adult, I can see that, in
mm,
hindsight, I can see all of that. So yeah, I think I would have liked a bit more patience. I would have
mm,
liked time. So all things that are free. Yeah, and even like, I mean, I sometimes pretend I'm interested in my kids' stuff because I love them so much.
yeah.
You know, I love them so much. Sit and watch your whatever video because I love you
Mm,
and I've got time for you. I've always got time for you. And yeah, like, I think that there's a lot of us like that now, parents like that who
yeah.
didn't get it. We're probably still doing it all wrong in some
Of course.
ways, but who knows? But I do think like what you said before about being able to talk about stuff with your children and have those like important conversations. Yeah, I feel like I'm in a space with my children where they don't tell me everything, I'm sure.
Mm,
And they probably have their secrets and shame like everybody. But we do talk a lot and I mean, I've had some amazing, I'm so like honored, gifted by some of the information my kids have given me. Yeah, and I think I've really helped. And I've asked them that my son's like, he's both, like I said, he's about to turn 15 tomorrow. He's like going into like all this GCSE stuff. And I'm saying to him, are you all right? Any subject that you are stressed about, you
yeah.
got your work and you got your revision ideas, like, are you freaking out? Tell me, because I'm here for you. And I think it was just assumed when we were growing up that we would learn how to learn. And that by the time you reached 15, you knew how to learn. So if you knew how
Mm,
to learn, then you could revise, you could do all of this. I had no
mm,
clue. I was like walking into lessons, like high half the time, but also just like very not really having a clue what to do and how to do it. I'd missed lots of points, and then you missed this. I think I would have liked a lot more support at school. I think I had one teacher who really had my back, and majority of the teachers it was just like an eye roll thing. They just found me
mm.
a problem.
Oh man. I, I don't even know where to start with some of that because I'm nodding my head so much,
It's a lot, right?
and I think the thing that stood out for me in everything you said there is that by 15 you're supposed to know what you're doing. 15 is still so young. I mean, we won't even talk about how the brain isn't even fully developed until 10 years later, but that's a kind of well accepted fact now. They still need us even if they're telling us they don't and they don't want us. It's what's really hard is for parents to get in there and cope with their own stress whilst this is all happening.
Yeah.
Because if we go right back to the beginning of this podcast, we talked about how stressful it is for parents to know how to support their kids, especially when their kids seem to not want them to. I really like what you said about being interested in the stuff they're interested in. And my take on that is that some of the stuff they're interested in, I could not care less about. It bores me senseless. I don't see the point. However, I'm interested in their thought processes and what and who they are
Correct.
and what they're interested in. So I try to spin it to, okay, I really don't get this video, but I really want to know why you do, and that'll teach me something about you, and that will bring our relationship a bit closer, and that will pay off in 10 years time when you're 25 and you're actually adult, or you're bringing your toddlers home to me because we've got that strong relationship. um what I mean, that's just my nugget, but what do you say to parents who just find the whole thing so stressful? Maybe they're time poor, they find it really impossible to connect with their kids, because that's what I hear a lot of parents who desperately want to connect with their kids and really struggle. And especially when they're neurodiverse. I mean, you've got an area of expertise there. What do you say to those parents? How can we help them?
Oh my God, there's so much.
Yes.
And also, like, when we talk about neurodiversity as well, like everybody's neurodiversity is quite different as well. And
Mm.
uh, yeah, displayed very differently, right?
Mhm.
So I guess it's dealing with what you've got in front of you. So I'm ADHD. My son's ADHD. My daughter is ADHD and ASD, and there's other ASD in our family as well, and in my husband's family. So it's really all around me. I have lots of sort of thought processes when it comes to like parenting. So I guess like my first thing is always like small conversations, just answer what they're asking. So it doesn't have to be like a whole sit down, like, you know.
Mm.
I always use the story. I don't know if you like when you go through this experience, like when your kids are young and they just like come in and out of the toilet, right? So we only have one toilet. So there's just like that's it. You know, if you're using it, someone wants to brush their teeth or someone's having a shower, it's just tough. You've got to all just survive, right? So it was one of those days, and I am on the toilet, and my period seemed to just catch me by surprise. And my son happened to walk in at the exact moment. He was 5 years old, and he walks in, and I go, oh, like that, because I'm shocked that I'm bleeding. Because I was like, oh, mummy, you're bleeding. And I'm thinking, oh, right, this is my moment. You know, I can't fluff
Yeah.
this up. I have to be like, I teach this. This is my child. Like, I don't want to lose this teachable moment, right? So yes, I am bleeding. Right. So, mummy, does it hurt? No, that might not have been true, but I was all right with it. 5, right? So I said, right. I said, yeah, that's just part of what women go through. And it just means that I can have babies, and it's kind of cool, really. And he went, oh, okay. And off he went. And that was
Yeah.
literally the end of the conversation. We were able to talk about it again. I didn't have to say to him, look, I'm on the toilet, go away, go away.
Yeah.
You know, that's what some you freak out because you don't have the answers. Actually, like we don't need to have a big conversation about that tiny thing. You don't really care. You're only
Yeah.
really asking, why am I bleeding? And now I'm telling you, and that's the end of it. And funnily enough, that actually put me in a space where when my children come in and I'm in that sort of situation, I'll just say, look, mum has got a period, give me a bit of space, off you go,
Mm,
come back.
mm,
I mean, totally respect me for it. And there's nothing weird or icky or gross. It's all just it's all good stuff. And I
mm.
think having those conversations, the little bits, have actually meant that they've come back to me and asked me I know my son asked me so many questions around sex and relationships, particularly in that sort of year 6, year 7, when they were having all those lessons.
Mm.
He was just come back to me and be like, I remember one time he actually said, he goes, what did he ask me? What? Oh yeah, what's wanking? I thought, well, that's when you might touch yourself and it's meant to feel good, some people do it, some people don't. And they thought, oh, okay. I thought it was that. Yeah, I thought it was that. And
Love
he's
him.
like hearing conversation. Yeah, he's hearing conversations with his friends and he's coming back to me as some sort of oracle to give him the answer. But honestly, I'm so proud of that. I feel so honored that I'm getting that information because actually, when I was his age, I had like Children's Britannica. I had like 3 lines to look up about sex and it was like nothing. And then it was basically like some rubbish magazine or your mate who
Yeah,
hadn't actually had any, but was like going on like she'd done everything.
yeah,
And you just believed her. She was so confident. So it was I really do sort of I think a lot of the things that we could be doing with our children about having that ear and just being there is a big thing for them. But also that idea of, even if you do the thing that I told you not to do, even if you do that and you get yourself in trouble, I still got you and I'm coming and you call
yeah.
me. It doesn't come and get you. It's all good. I'll come and get you. I'll come and get your friend. I'll come get any of you.
Mm,
If something goes wrong, I am a grown up and I'm here for you. I am
mm,
one of your trusted people. And I hope, yeah, knowing that you've got all these trusted adults, that community idea, there are trusted adults all around our children. And I don't care who my children speak to, whether it's me, whether it's my best friend, whether it's, this auntie or whoever, these
mm.
are all people who can scaffold you and guide you. Yeah, I think it's I don't think it's as difficult as we think it is.
Right.
I think sometimes parents' expectations are quite big, and maybe they think that their child should tell them everything because when they were 2, they told them everything. But there is nobody who knows everything about everybody. There's nobody who knows everything about you, Helen. You've got your secrets and shame like everybody else. There is no one person who's going to know everything about you. So therefore, there is no one person who you're going to know everything about.
Yeah.
And that includes your kids, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's okay. And it's being okay with that. And I think, you've gone full circle. I think what you're saying is it doesn't have to be as scary as we think sometimes it is as parents. We need to stay curious about their lives because they're different to what our lives were like growing up. And
Real
when they
time.
are giving us a signal that they want some communication or they want some answers, we should just answer those things in the same way we would have when they were little, on a need to know basis. They want to know this. They don't want the lecture. They don't want any more stuff. They don't want our theories on the world, which is what I'm guilty of doing sometimes. When if my children are in the mood to speak to me, I'm like, right, this is my opportunity. I'm going to tell them everything that I think they should be doing with their lives, and then I just kind of screech to a halt and go, they don't want to hear that. They just asked how to handle this particular issue they've got at school and whether I had an opinion on it, but they don't actually want me to follow up with them and check whether they did it my way or not. And if we keep that kind of communication going with them, then it's an evolution of a supportive relationship like the one you just described. And we have to trust ourselves we can do it and be patient with them that they will come back to us for more as and when they need it. and then trust them that when they're not coming back to us, often it's because they are finding the support elsewhere. They are figuring out how to do these things themselves, which they have to do. They have to grow up and be independent adults. There's always that little worry that they're finding support elsewhere with the people who take the drugs, and they've found their people there, and we have to be mindful of that. But as
Correct.
long as we've kept the communication channels open and we're accepting and not judgmental, I think you're saying that we've got a good chance of it working out okay.
Yeah, I think that is what I'm saying. Actually, a lot of what you just said actually really does make sense to me. Like um, the idea of not necessarily, I may not have experienced what it's like to be
Mm.
a young person in today's modern world. But I don't need to look at, currently there's like 900 odd drugs available to people in the UK, right? So it's huge
Mm.
amount of stuff, right? Now, I am not tried every single drug. I don't know everything about every single drug. I worked as a drug worker for 12 years with young people. So, and I still don't know everything about drugs, but I do know a lot about empathy. And I think understanding real empathy is a great way of listening. And I think sometimes people think empathy is like putting ourselves in someone's shoes. I know what it's like. Oh, right, I get it. You were abused, and I understand, and that must be awful. But I can't really like put myself in your shoes because I've still got my shoes on. So it's dangerous for me to try and assume that my understanding of your experience will be the same, right?
Mhm.
So for me, empathy is the feeling that that person is feeling, and the feeling tends to be like a feeling of like a number, maybe of 10 different feelings that we've all felt as humans,
Mhm.
and I can get down with that feeling. I get it. You're really sad right now. I'm not going to
Mhm.
come in and try and fix it. I just hear you feel really sad, and I know what sad feels like, and I'm going to
Mm.
sit with you. And I'm so sorry you feel sad. You must feel sad because anybody would feel sad in this position, and I get it.
Mm.
And when we have a moment to feel sad, we move on, right? But if I'm not even validated and allowed to have my moment, then I'm useless. I'm just burying it. I'm taking drugs. I'm harming myself. I'm bullying someone else. It's who knows where I'm going to take it.
Mm.
So I think that would be a really top tip for parents is to really empathize, like forget fixing, like
Mm.
fixing comes from a conversation anyway. It should be a shared goal. You
Mm.
shouldn't be the one deciding on the goals. You need to have the same agenda as your child, so you don't have an agenda clash. And and then it's all going to make a bit more
Mm.
sense. But also, every child is different. Look, I'm currently paying my son £5 to go to the after school homework club, right? He's refusing to go. He said, but I will go if you're going to give me £5. I was like, do you know what? Like, if that's how you roll, then I just want you to go to the homework club. I'm really worried that you're not doing enough homework. So I don't want to say all of that. Blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, look, I'll pay you. It's like work. You go to work. There you go. And he's
Yeah.
like, only £5. Yeah, only
Yeah.
£5. Right? Just go. Let me go, right? But you have to think about what works for your child as well, right? So, sometimes things don't work for them. Some children don't work by reward. Some children are happy to do things. They don't live in my house, but they're happy to do things just because they know you want them to. Yeah, I've heard about these children, mummy wants me to do that, so to make mummy happy. No, my children are not those children at all. But yeah, if that's how you roll, if that's your reward, I think reward is great. I think praise is great. I think noticing is all great.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mum was really focused on my academics, and I had so many other talents. I was really musical, really creative, really good at
Mm.
sport, and I just not praised. You get praised like one day a year. You get praised for the talent show,
Mm.
praised at sports day, and then you spend the rest of the year in trouble,
Mm.
like constantly
Mm.
berated all day long, right? I don't think that that has changed in schools. I really don't.
No.
That's what worries me.
Yeah.
And I'll just say something that interesting, right? So we're recent. Well, in the last year, we put my daughter through the autism and the ADHD assessment, right? And I was really fascinated how they did the ADHD assessment in particular, because what they do is they get the child really bored, and then they see how they behave, right? And if they
Mm.
act out, then we can see the ADHD behavior, right? So to me, that is school. Put me in a school, it's really boring, and now you're expecting me to conform, but I'm so bored. You're so not making it interesting enough for me. You totally haven't got my learning style. I'm a problem in your room already. So I don't feel welcome. I don't feel like
Mm.
you want me there. So I'm automatically going to start trying to make it more enjoyable for myself.
Mm.
And in doing that, I become disruptive. I become a problem, right? Maybe I'm going to ask too many questions. Maybe I'm going to do stupid stuff. But yeah, I don't think it's coincidental that 80% of young boys in prisons are diagnosed with ADHD. I think that
Mm.
is a hugely obvious problem that is systemic. Like you can see where it's coming from. We need to tackle how we are dealing with all young people in school and how we are not making learning fun, accessible. I pride myself on everything we do in schools being fun,
Mm.
and even like the tough stuff. We did a lesson on
Mm.
FGM. It's still a fun lesson. I still make the most of it. It's a really sad topic and it's really heavy, but we have a good time, and everybody's engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this whole we still haven't changed that system. It is major. It's a problem. And it's fast forward, like you said, it's everybody who ends up on a therapist's chair is talking about what happened
Yeah.
exactly at that exact time. There is that period of time. So that period of time actually will shape your whole life moving forward, your whole trajectory, like your relationships, all of your arguments, your everything. And we're just not. We're just tipping. We're touching it. The idea of
Mm.
mental health and but we're really not taking it as seriously as we could be, in my opinion.
Mm. Mm. Oh, Charlotte, you brought us really nicely around to what it is that you do, because you work with professionals to teach them the skills to do this for children, right? But the the thing you've done with Flourish is aimed at parents, I think. So can you tell us a little bit about what that bundle of tools and learning resources is, and how it works for parents, and what the goal is, and how it helps?
Yeah, so the courses that I've been part of putting together with Flourish, and it's been a real labour of love. I've really enjoyed putting it together, and I know that we've had some fantastic feedback from parents, and just this idea that maintaining a rapport with young people, it's not just if you're a social worker, or like, we all need to be maintaining our rapport with young people. When we maintain a rapport, young people come back and have another conversation with us, right? So I don't know, like, let's say you have a sex education lesson at school. If your parents don't know, or your carers don't know that you had this lesson, then they're not going to talk about it with you later. Like, they
Mm.
should know the
Mm.
same. But then when you come home, you go, "Oh, you had that lesson about puberty. What was that like? That must have been, I used to love talking with my kids about like when my daughter was like 4, she used to tell us about all the people who used to fart in her lessons. She'd be like, "Oh, this one farted," and we all laughed. And it's fine. All this, like, it's great. I want to hear what happened in your lesson and how people
Yeah.
reacted, right? And the parenting bundle is very similar. It's got that you sit down with your child and you pick a topic. Yeah, there's numerous topics, and we're adding more topics as well. It's definitely not like the full thing. Yeah, it's still but it's brilliant. So we're looking at all different things like how we work with our children online, just even the idea that we're giving children phones. And to me, I just look at the internet a bit like, I don't know, Bangkok Market, right? Now I wouldn't drop my kid off in Bangkok Market and say, here, navigate yourself. Because, like maybe you're looking at, I don't know, you're looking at this, and then the next thing you're at a sex show. Like that's the same on the internet, right? 1 minute I'm looking at this, and the next minute I'm here, and I don't know what I'm looking at. We shouldn't be dropping our kids off in that space without allowing them to navigate it with us, right? So these courses give you that. So it's not just that with the internet, but it's looking at eating disorders, it's looking at mental health and stress, and just how we build those positive relationships with young people. There's some stuff about self-harm and exam stress, and how we talk about gender and sexuality. And I mean, this is a massive topic already, about gangs and violence and things like that. And just like having the conversations. So you can sit down and do these courses. They're like 30 minutes long and they're all interactive. I've used all the tools that I use when I'm working with young people. And, like I said, I pride myself on it being engaging, passionate. Like you're going to learn something. I don't want to talk about the boring lecture. I want the juicy bit, because that's what young people want. They only want the juicy bit, So if
Yeah.
you speak to, like, for example, you speak to young people about cannabis, teenagers that are using cannabis, you say, look, if you use cannabis, you'll get psychosis and you'll get criminal record and you won't be able to go to America. And young person will just go, they want to go to America.
Yeah.
That's the end of the conversation. You've just killed it there and then. And not only have you killed it, they're not coming back to you to ask you any more questions. It's over. They're going to their mate who doesn't have psychosis, who is taking cannabis and is having a great time, because that's the conversation they want to have. So they want to know the good, they want to know the bad, they want to know the whole picture. And I think these parenting bundles give you that. They give you that time to sit with your child, have a discussion, have a debate, go through stuff. Maybe I'm going to answer questions. Maybe you're going to answer questions. Maybe you're going to know more than me. Let's see. Maybe I can learn a bit. Yeah, that idea of things were different in my day, right? And I never thought I would ever say things were different in my day, but things were seriously different in my day, for sure, right? Yeah. So tell me what it's like. Tell me what the modern world's like. I'm trying to know, what is that accurate? Is that what is everybody vaping? No, everybody isn't vaping. And there's a lot of that in the courses as well, just that real understanding of what social norms are and what is actually happening. I think sometimes we can be in our own we can be in our own bubble where we think that all young people are in gangs, because my young person's in a gang and I only see these gang members, so I just think everyone's in gangs. My kids using drugs and all their friends are using drugs, so all young people use drugs, and that just isn't reality, right? That's just pockets of our country. It's not to say that it's not happening, it really is, but everybody has an opportunity to be something and achieve their potential. And I really hope that these courses allow parents to sit with their children and connect and engage and build rapport and have further conversations and be closer than they were before. And I mean, that's the kind of basic. I mean, that's like the lowest level. I think those courses would give you that, let alone what that would give a child to have a parent who really cared that much to take that time with them.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking that's what's interesting about our kids, right? If we're not interested in their latest video game or their latest TikTok hilarious thing that they've found that you think is nonsense, we can be interested in what is actually going on in their world. And it sounds like these courses which are quite bite sized. That's why it's a bundle, right? I'm thinking you can dip in and out. You don't have to follow it from start to finish. Pick a topic and go through that with a child, with your teenager, can open up that sort of communication, teach you what things are like for them, and by dint of doing that, almost just help them feel more connected. And we're back to that connection thing that you talked about right at the beginning, and how important that is for them to feel like they belong and you understand. So it's flourish.co.uk, and it's the empowered parent bundle, empowered parenting course bundle, which you'll find on their course bundles page.
Yeah, I mean, there's 15 courses on there. It's really exciting. There's gonna be a neurodiversity one, like working with your neurodiverse child as well. And I guess, like, to a degree, like, there's no parenting manuals, but there are, like, and I feel like this is like a string to your bow, right? So you've got a bit more in your arsenal, you've got space to chat. It's indirect as well. So it's not like, oh, we're doing this drug session because I think you're on drugs. It's like, we're doing this drug session because it's part of the parenting bundle. So let's just talk about it. And we're not talking about you, we're talking about, I don't know, whoever's in the case that we're looking at, or the examples that are being shown. And I think young people are really good at judging other people, and indirectly then you sort of reflect yourself, don't you? So it's really useful. It's going to open up those conversations, as well as increase your knowledge for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I might do them myself, actually, because there's going to be some things in there that I wish
Oh,
I knew
please,
about what my kids' lives are like. And for listeners of this podcast, Flourish have given a discount code. It's KICS15 to get some money off the cost of the course. So I will drop the link to Flourish and the bundles in the show notes. So when you finish listening, drop down and click on that link, and you'll be taken there. Charlotte, you've done this work with Flourish, but you have another company of your own, right? But this is where you do all of your work with the professionals who are in contact with our teenagers, with our children. Is there anything else you want to share? Where can people find out more about you, about Flourish? Anything that you want to share before we end?
Well, please, obviously, go to flourish.co.uk and just check out what they're doing. And I mean, I didn't mention also there's a bullying one and there's a vaping one as well, which is very current.
I want to know more about vaping.
Yeah, so the vaping courses that I deliver, funnily enough, we have public health come on our vaping courses. So, like, vaping seems to be, we're finding out more about it. It's fascinating. But the stuff that I'm doing, as well as with my work with Flourish, so I run KIP Education, which stands for Knowledge is Power. I set up KIP Education solely for, very similar to how we started this podcast, with the idea of helping young people that were like me growing up, who struggled, who couldn't navigate the world, who just felt a bit lost. So majority of my work actually is done with young people, directly doing workshops with young people. And I think that's how, when I put the parenting bundle together, that's a lot of my input is, I do this with young people already. I know it works. It's evidence-based. They love it. They react. They engage. They find it enjoyable. So we can translate that in this space as well. So yeah, I guess the stuff that I'm doing with KIP Education is the workshops around all things around PSHE, and then working with professionals and parents to connect better with young people, to maintain rapport. And I guess that's the way that we're going to stay together, aren't we, all of us? if we're doing those things, if we don't dismiss our children and we notice them,
Yeah.
yeah. My child came down the other day, I make you laugh, came down and they didn't have his phone with him. I said, what's wrong with you? He said, what are you talking about? He's like, I come to get a snack. I said, where's your phone? I don't know. So you don't know. You don't know what your phone is. This to me is alarm bells, right? I said, who have you had an argument with? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, who have you had an argument with? He goes, how do you know I've had an argument with someone? So, because you haven't got your phone. Like, you would have your phone with you the whole time. It's just attached to you. It's an extension of you. But if someone has upset you in that phone, you haven't got your phone with you. And that is how it was an alarm bell for me straight away. And I was on the button totally. And he'd had a row with a friend. He'd had this big row. They were rowing and he just had enough. He just put the phone to the side, don't want to talk to that person, can't handle it, can't handle the situation. And he'd left the phone. And knowing those kinds of things, you'll deal with your child a lot better if you've got your eyes open. You need to get your own head out of your own phone. Otherwise, you wouldn't even notice your child coming down the stairs without his phone. It's just being there and being awake to your kids is going to make such a difference to their life. Being interested and wanting them and letting them know. I mean, they call me Smother, Helen, right?
Excellent.
And it's not mother, right? Now I take this as like an accolade. I know they're trying to upset me. I love it. I think it is like actually a compliment to all parents. If I was mother, that's how I'm going to be forever. I'm there for you.
Brilliant. I love that. Smother. They're just there for them and you know stuff about them. That's what they don't like, isn't it? You know things about them. But I think
like it and love it.
And love it. Yeah. I think that finishing the podcast on the note of the use of a phone is quite a reassuring thing for parents to hear, because it's the one thing that I hear all the time, how their kids' phones are the problem. They're the problem for absolutely everything. They're the cause of every single piece of conflict. And it's just not true. They're learning how to manage it and you're helping them because you're noticing what's going on. Charlotte, thank you so much for your time today. When you finish listening, guys, go click on the link in the show notes or visit flourish.co.uk and have a look for the Empowered Parenting Bundle. I guarantee you're going to find something in there that is of value to your relationship with your kids. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a rating on your podcast app. And if you know someone who might benefit from listening, do share it with them. It also means a lot when you give me feedback. So if you have comments or suggestions for another episode, or know someone who'd like to tell their story on the Teenage Kicks podcast, do get in touch at helen@helenwills.com or come and find me on my blog, actuallymommy.co.uk. Head over there now for more articles on the joys, and there are many, of parenting a teenager. Bye for now.